हेलो एंड वेलकम टू ज़ी कंपेनियन। मैं हूँ अनीला और मैं बहुत खुश हूँ आपको बताने के लिए मैं आपकी नई कंपेनियन हूँ। आज हम स्किन वाइटनिंग के बारे में बात करेंगे एंड आई एम जॉइंड इन द स्टूडियो विद फिल्म डायरेक्टर Stuart Gatt, who produced a short film called My Beautiful White Skin on the skin whitening phenomena. हमेशा की तरह ये शो लाइव एंड इंटरेक्टिव है, सो अगर आपका कोई भी सवाल हो या फिर आपको कोई सुझाव देना हो आप हमें फ़ोन कर सकते हैं, ईमेल, फेसबुक या ट्वीट भी कर सकते हैं। हमारे सब फ़ोन नंबर स्क्रीन पे है जो बिल्कुल फ्री है हमारे UK एंड यूरोप व्यूअर्स के लिए। एंड I'd really like to know from you, have you used any skin whitening products and if so, why? And also I'd like to open up the discussion about where the skin whitening phenomena has come from. Why is it deemed that fairer skin is more beautiful? But before I introduce Stuart and speak with him, here is Sujata, my lovely co-companion, with some interesting facts about skin whitening.
Thank you so much, Anila. आज स्टूडियो में हम बात कर रहे हैं अबाउट स्किन वाइटनिंग। बहुत सारे लोग स्किन वाइटनिंग करवाने के लिए अलग अलग प्रोडक्ट्स इस्तेमाल करते हैं और कुछ लोग बहुत एक्सपेंसिव ट्रीटमेंट्स करवाते हैं टू गेट अ फेयर स्किन टोन। शायद इसी की वजह से स्किन वाइटनिंग प्रोडक्ट्स की सो दैट इज वन रीजन टू बी थैंकफुल फॉर योर स्किन कलर एंड बी सैटिस्फाइड विद इट। सो दीज वर सम इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट्स अबाउट स्किन वाइटनिंग। ओवर टू यू, अनीला।
Thank you very much for that, Sujata. And now I am joined with Stuart, film director of My Beautiful White Skin. Thank you very much for being here today, Stuart.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to open up discussion about the whole skin whitening phenomena. So what is My Beautiful White Skin about?
My Beautiful White Skin is a short film that's set around a British Asian girl who's desperately trying to lighten her skin in time for a Bollywood audition. So the story just really follows her journey as she desperately tries to find a product that will lighten her skin in time for the audition. Although she is an incredible dancer, so naturally she should be a great fit for the audition, but she feels because she's dark skinned she's inadequate, and therefore she must try and change a superficial ailment that she has to then succeed at the audition. So we just basically follow her as she does that.
Okay, and we do have a clip to show our viewers who haven't seen it. Can you just explain what it's about? So it's a clip about her kind of cutting a mirror.
Yeah, so it's basically, this is the lead Parita. This is her daily ritual of she's trying a new cream.
Right.
And she's been tracking the progress like with most of the creams that you can buy now. They have a little colour chart to see if you're improving, and this is her doing her daily routine and checking her progress.
Okay, well, for anybody who hasn't seen My Beautiful White Skin, here is a short clip for you. Okay, so in that clip we see her kind of cutting the mirror, and that's a really kind of harrowing clip, isn't it? So what were you trying to achieve with that part of the film?
Well, the thing is that Parita's character, and I do think this is probably a universal trait of most people who are trying to lighten their skin or change their appearance in some way. There's an element of self-hate and an element of self-destruction.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see that and explore those themes within the film and within the character, because she literally hates her image.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the frustration boiling over. You know, she hadn't seen, like most of these creams, they don't really work.
Yeah.
And that's her, again, checking and seeing no progress, and that then parlays into this frustration and the self-hate, again, running the knife up her arm, hoping she could, you know, wishing she could cut her skin off, and then hating her own reflection. It is something that I think is something that you'll find across the board with people who do try and lighten their skin or want to change themselves in some way. And that then does play into the story, which comes in later, that element of Preeta. She has a self-destructive element, which is an important characteristic for that person.
And kind of, so that's exploring the psychological effect.
Yeah.
And how do people come out of that? Because obviously there must be something where people don't feel confident and they do lack that self-confidence. So where do they get the confidence from? Because it's so popular, isn't it, the whole skin whitening thing, and people wanting fairer skin. So how can we kind of bring that confidence out?
Yeah, I mean, two things. I mean, one, that this is part of the approach to this film was to see it from a psychological perspective, because, you know, we always see in Bollywood and see the fair skin you know, lead, she always or he always becomes successful, and we see in commercials where the dark-skinned person isn't successful. So I wanted to see this. That was really what the film was about, approaching that psychological aspect. In terms of how do you gain confidence, I think it's important to understand how you've developed a lack of confidence. And in this case, we know that being dark-skinned is portrayed as a negative, and being in fact, being Indian is portrayed as a negative, not just being dark-skinned.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
Yeah.
So, being Indian, you know, my mum's Indian. Being Indian, we come from a legacy of inferiority, and that's what's caused this lack of confidence. So Indians have a self-hate. You know, if you're, you know, and so how do you need to reverse, you need to re-educate the mind,
Right.
that, you know, to reverse the damage that's been done from colonial powers and so on, in the same way that every group of peoples have empowered themselves.
So you very much come from the viewpoint that skin whitening is a product of colonialism. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a truism not just for Indians, but for every victim of European colonialism. So if you go to South America, they can't even identify themselves as indigenous Americans. They call themselves so-called Latinos or Hispanics.
Yeah.
They've lost their identity, but got Spanish names. They're all Christians. And they hold on to the idea that they're Spanish. You go to Africa and the Caribbean and North America, where African slaves were taken, their names were changed, religion changed, no sense of history. And the same with Indians. And now, although Indians weren't, I mean, in fact, my family is Anglo-Indian, so they have white names, British names, or Portuguese names. It's not their real names, you know.
Okay.
And they're Christians. In India, it was done slightly differently, because although we weren't completely reinvented, which other victims of colonialism were subjected to, we had our history rewritten for us. Because what the British done is they made the argument a lot over in history that Indians were a unique civilization because we didn't have a sense of history, which is obviously completely ludicrous. You know, we have one of the most sophisticated, complex societies. Now, if you argue that peoples have no sense of history, you can then construct a history for them that suits your colonial policies.
Yes, yeah.
So we now, as Indians, have inherited a history that was written for us by the British. Now, naturally, the reason why rewriting someone's history or erasing someone's history was so important to rulers, or I should say rulers as colonializers, imperialists, is because you can create a sense of inferiority about your race. So they painted us as uncivilized. They also, you know, said that we were subjected to Muslim tyranny, and we were very grateful as Hindus to be for the British to arrive. And also they tried to divide us and claim that we were always. So the British history said that we were always had endemic poverty.
Yeah.
we were black squatting creatures, barbarians. This is the kind of doctrine that you saw.
The whole superiority, inferiority.
Yes, they had to paint themselves as superior and us as inferior, and obviously and that was in, obviously that wasn't being Indian became a negative and hateful identity for us to identify with.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it now in just even growing up. I mean, even part of the young generation like us. How many Indians don't say they're Indian? They'll say there's something else. Like when I grew up, I was ashamed to say I was Indian because I'm half Italian.
Okay.
So I had to say I was Italian. I was saying Italian was like a dirty. Saying Indian was like saying like a dirty word.
Okay.
So I felt I had to hide from people because Italian was cool, Indian was a negative.
Okay.
So in that way, I experienced that self-hate.
Right.
And when I see skin lightening today, I see that as exactly the same thing. Is that we're not Indians, indigenous Indians don't look like how people in Bollywood look. I mean, a majority of us don't, maybe 5%. Yet everyone is I don't think it's a coincidence that we're striving to make our skin look like peoples that have subjugated us to an inferiority complex for 400 years.
And what about the people, as you said, like us and generations hair? So what about British Asians? Because has that colonialism kind of filtered down, do you think? Or, what is it, why do people hair want to lighten their skin? What are your beliefs on that?
It's funny because when making this film, I was torn between, do I set this in India or do I set this in England? And I thought there was an added dimension being in India, because obviously as an Indian, you're still subjected to the whole, that's going to come from your parents. Like, I grew up, my grandma was very dark. We're from South, so she's a converted Tamil. Even though she's got a Tamil name, she's got a British name now, but her family originally were Tamil. Okay. And I was aware growing up, maybe not exposed to it directly, but I was aware that she was exposed to terrible intra-race racism by her in-laws about her skin colour.
Okay.
Like terrible. The poor woman suffered terribly. Right. Because my granddad was very fair. And because she was dark, she was seen as some kind of blight to the family.
I see.
So I was aware of it. Now, being a British Asian, you are then also exposed not only to that intra-race racism, but also to British racism towards you. Yeah. So you've got the self-hate, which is there. And I think when you're in England, there's an added dimension that's come from the indigenous British, white British, that's aimed not just towards Indians but blacks, and predominantly. I mean, India and Africans and Indians were victims of British colonialism. That's why there's so many of us here. It's not a coincidence. And naturally, British people, the indigenous British people, were part of the reason why racism exists, is because while they're causing these terrible crimes in India and Africa, the papers back home are telling the white British people that these people are uncivilized and barbarians, so don't worry if we, subjugate them to terror. Yeah. So they've obviously now built up an attitude towards us like that, so we experience racism here, added to the racism we have towards ourselves. So I think as a British Asian, even though you might not be in India bombarded by these kind of, which is ironic because in England you couldn't get away with showing some of the skin whitening adverts you get in India.
Yeah, it's crazy out there.
Which makes no sense. But you are still subjugated to the racism here, even if it's subtle or not subtle. I mean, over here it's still there. I mean, even in subtle ways. I mean, like I was with the elections last year when Modi was voted in. Yes. If you looked on the BBC website and they said Indians vote in historic elections, the pictures they showed of India, they had a guy riding in a cart with no teeth. They had a guy one picture, I can't make sense of it, a guy sitting in a box in a dilapidated house, had nothing to do with voting. Every picture showed the most poverty-ridden parts of India, and it was India voting historic elections. India's one of the, it's going to be a superpower. It's one of the fastest growing economies, and they didn't show any metropolitan areas of India in these images. Now, imagine me now as a British Indian, identifying with those images. It's natural that is they have negative ideas of India, and they're still very much alive. So as a British Indian, you're exposed to that side of it.
And talking about the wealth, I want to get onto that, but I just want to remind our viewers that our numbers are on the screen and they are absolutely free, and do get involved in our discussion. What do you think? Do you think that skin whitening stems from colonialism, as Stuart, our guest, believes? And do you think that here, as British Asians, we have that kind of hatred, self-hatred towards ourselves, and then with the added encountered racism too? Or what do you think about skin whitening in general? Is it something that you do, and if so, why? Do get in touch with us. Our numbers are all free and they're on the screen. So kind of back to the wealth side of things. In the film that you've made, the girl is kind of not from a wealthy family.
Yeah.
and she's buying these kind of expensive skin products, and her mum has to go and then sell her hair to foot the bills of the house. Do you think that skin whitening is something, like using the products, is something for the wealthy?
Yeah,
that's what I very much got from it in the film.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that she's a working class girl, and these products are expensive.
Right.
I mean, just the average girl, not even one that's skin lightening, spends so much on cosmetics. It is a massive industry. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not too up to date on what the prices are of skin. I mean, it's very expensive ones, I know that, and the sort of standard ones, they do have entry level points.
I mean, it's a thriving industry in India, isn't it? I've heard that there's adverts everywhere, commercials, and
everywhere.
It's just bombarded there.
Well, in 2010,
it's such a big.
It's huge. In 2010, it was a $400 million industry.
Wow.
Around the world, it's a $1 billion industry.
Wow, okay.
Which is huge.
That is huge.
You know, and the irony is that Fair and Lovely, which is like the most common one, is owned by Unilever, which is a British.
Although, of course, we can't kind of mention or say anything about products, but.
Okay, yeah. So no, the point I'm making is that these products, forget names, the products that are out there, most of the corporations that own them are actually British or Dutch corporations, which is ironic because the same peoples that created the inferiority complex are now profiting from it some 400 years later.
Okay. So I know that your views are about colonialism, and that's where it all stems from, but let's say somebody may come from the viewpoint that it goes further back than that, you know, because there's a lot about caste and how different castes were associated with different colours. I mean, what would you say to people who think that it goes further back than colonialism?
Well, if they say that, I would say that they don't really understand the caste system, because it's not about skin colour, it's about your ethnic group, Brahmin.
But then, of course, like, different colours are associated, different work, jobs.
Yeah, but it's not skin colour though, it's your group. So a dark-skinned Brahmin still benefits from all the benefits of being a Brahmin. A fair-skinned Dalit's still going to be, you know, doing the worst jobs. It's not. This is something that the British have, again, when James Mill wrote the history of British India, which is the history that most people now learn, even in Indian schools. That's still the backbone of Indian history.
Yeah.
It talks about the caste system and links it to skin colour. But historically, it was never about skin colour. I mean, if the quick way to answer that is, if that were true, there's no legacy of anyone trying to lighten their skin before the British came in and rewrote. And that was only 1854, I believe, that Mills wrote that book.
Okay.
So a dark-skinned Brahmin still benefits from the caste system being a Brahmin than he would if he was a fair-skinned Brahmin. So, so the caste system has a lot to answer for in terms of social hierarchy, for sure, but it's not actually linked to skin colour. There's no evidence that suggests skin colour determines your...
But then wouldn't it still add to the inferiority complex?
The fact that Brahmins are fairer skinned in general?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it's easy to make that link. I can understand that for sure. I've always said to people as well, is if you just erase it, let's say for instance that were true, erase India from the map for a minute,
right?
And you understand this isn't isolated to Indians, this is Africans, Asians, other Asians, even further east than we are, and people from the indigenous peoples of the Americas as well. This isn't a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, and talking about the social aspect and kind of caste, you know, let's move on to something about the social aspect of skin whitening. So in the film, the girl is kind of trying to get into Bollywood and that kind of industry. Now, is this something that you deliberately did about Bollywood, or is it just kind of to do with work in general?
Definitely Bollywood.
Right.
Definitely Bollywood, because, you know, it really is. It's like so exclusively for fair-skinned actresses and actors.
Although there are many dark-skinned actors and actresses.
Many? Do you think there's many?
There are. There's lots. I won't name any, but there are lots.
I don't know. I mean, okay. Well, the big ones especially the female actresses.
Right, predominantly.
Predominantly, overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
And again, when we say dark skin, I mean, I come from the South. I mean, dark skinned is black dark.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so to say someone who's maybe medium is dark is slightly controversial. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a dark skinned Asian or Indian.
I suppose they kind of do lighten them up and everything.
Yeah, they do. I mean, you just got to read the testimony of some of the celebrities. They say they always whiten me up.
I mean, on Big Brother as well, we saw how Shil Pashetti kind of had the skin whitening on her face quite openly as well. So how do you think Bollywood contributes to it, to the whole skin whitening phenomena?
Massively. I mean, we love Bollywood, right? Everyone dreams about Bollywood and loves Bollywood movies. You can't help. I mean, it's an educating factor for sure. If the people you look up to don't look anything like you, again, we're talking about a tiny % of Indians that look like that.
Yes, yeah.
Naturally, you know, without the sort of overexposure on the cameras and. Of course, it can only build an inferiority complex, can't it? I mean, it can only add to it. It's another dimension, and it's a dangerous dimension, because there are girls like Parita in this story who must go through what she goes through. I mean, can you imagine just how ridiculous it is to say just the way that I am born, something you cannot help, is going to prevent me from achieving my goals or my dreams. I'm an amazing dancer, an amazing actress.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the thing that I cannot change, the way I'm born, is going to determine whether I can be successful in that industry. And as Indians, and people behind the camera and in Bollywood and stuff, they're people just like us. We've all got a responsibility, and I think that you exploit that or do yourself a disservice if you're perpetuating this idea that white is beautiful.
And do you think, because I read on a blog, somebody had written how there was like a job ad that kind of said the more fairer you are, the more job opportunities you have open. Do you think that's just exclusive to industries such as Bollywood or modelling or any kind of creative where you're on camera, or do you think it filters out into various other industries?
It does. I mean, I read a report. It's not so relevant. I mean, it's relevant, but it's not specific to India. But it was talking about in the US. They'd done a study of immigrants into the UK, and the fairer-skinned immigrants had a 20% chance of being more successful in better-paid jobs, in getting promotions and so on and so forth.
Wow, okay.
And within India, it does. I mean, the adverts. You'll see adverts that show someone not finding a partner because they're dark-skinned. Yes, yeah. Or someone, they'll go to a job interview with dark skin, go and use the cream, come back with fairer skin, and they'll get the job. So even the inference is that it applies to the whole, every other element of society. Yes, absolutely. And what I want to know is, because obviously you think that the whole skin whitening phenomenon stems from colonialism, do you feel that Bollywood perpetuates colonialism? Well, they definitely perpetuate the ideals of colonialism, which is that white is a superior race to the dark and indigenous population. I mean, to say they perpetuate colonialism that would be a bit harsh, but the ideals, they definitely continue. Okay, yeah, because when I was watching it, I was kind of like, you know, you've taken Bollywood, which is quite obvious because it's a difficult industry to get into, especially if you're darker, and the whole, you know, skin whitening thing with that. But then I just wanted to know the kind of link to colonialism as well. And we've mentioned marriage. That's definitely something we will talk about after the break. But to everybody watching, we are going to a short break. I hope you're enjoying the show so far with Stuart on our topic of skin whitening. And remember, you can call in and email us and give us any kind of opinions that you have on skin whitening and what you believe, why, you know, maybe you've grown up in a culture that believes that having fairer skin is more beautiful. And if so, why do you think that is? Where do you think it stems from? I'd love for you to get in touch and let us know your opinions. But keep watching The Companion, and we'll be back very shortly. Hello and welcome to The Companion. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. It's been a really
interesting discussion so far about skin whitening. I am joined in the studio with film director Stuart Gatt, who produced a short film called My Beautiful White Skin on the skin whitening phenomena. And I'd love to hear from you about what your views are on skin whitening. Maybe you've used skin whitening products before. If so, let us know why. Where has it come from, the fact that fairer skin is more beautiful? Our numbers are free for anybody phoning from the UK and within Europe. And you can also email, Facebook and tweet us. But before I start again with our interesting discussion, here is my lovely co-companion Sujata with some top tips for you.
थैंक यू सो मच अनिला। जैसे कि आप जानते हैं, आज स्टूडियो में हम बात कर रहे हैं अबाउट स्किन वाइटनिंग। तो अगर आप कोई भी स्किन वाइटनिंग प्रोडक्ट्स यूज कर रहे हो तो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू टू बी केयरफुल, फाइंड देम यूजफुल। ओवर टू यू अनिला।
Thank you, Sujata, for those great top tips. Now, I am here with Stuart Gatt, and we are continuing our discussion about skin whitening. So, Stuart, before the break, we were talking about marriage. And where do you think it's come from? You know, when Asians are kind of looking for a partner, it's very predominant that they say, oh, you know, we want somebody who's fairer skinned. I've seen some matrimonial ads in newspapers as well, and, you know, they say on them, we're looking for somebody who's fair skinned or light skinned. So where do you think this comes from? Apart from the whole colonialism, why does it filter into marriage?
It's difficult to leave out colonialism in the answer. I mean, it's like doing a lot of research for this film. You would see testimony from a lot of people that would have a relationship with someone, and one was dark skinned, one was fair skinned, and they would say that the relationship would break down when it came to the point of marriage, because they would say that my parents just don't want me to be with you. Yeah, really, it's really sad. And one in particular, a guy, American guy. So even this is Indians in America.
Right.
He was with a girl, and he said they were together for a couple of years and had an amazing relationship. But when he proposed, he said that my parents kind of want me to marry a light-skinned Brahmin guy.
God.
Yeah, really
that's
sad.
Shocking.
And that's common. That's not not something that's like an isolated incident.
And our viewers can see actually on the screen right now, there's an ad on the screen, and it says about, you know, they're looking for fair-skinned partners. So, you know, that's shocking.
It is shocking. Again, this is something that you can find linked to colonialism. You know, part of the colonial doctrine was to create a subgroup that was a mix of the colonial ruler and the indigenous. Okay,
so this is kind of interrace.
So the British would pay Indian women one pagoda if they became impregnated by an Englishman. Which would create fairer skinned babies. You know, if an Indian man impregnated a white woman, he'd be hung, you know, or killed. It didn't work the other way around. So there was always, this isn't unique to British and India. Done that in South, the Dutch done it in South Africa, which created the so-called coloured group, which is just mixed race people.
Right.
In South America, they created mestizo, and there's this. You find this again. It's a universal across colonialism. So there was always within the law this promotion of creating a fairer skinned child. And again, within Indian society for 400 years, the fairer you were, the closer you were to British. If British were right here and Indians were here, somewhere in between, you fight to get that. And I experienced that as an Anglo-Indian within my family, who really have probably got no British in them. They've got British names. But to try and get an Anglo-Indian who was fair-skinned meant you were more British. And you hear the rhetoric, oh, he looks so British, he's English, and they're not, you know, they're Indian, but there is this pressure within the community to find someone fairer. And now, again, I do think the caste system may play into this.
Right, okay.
Because, you know, if someone's a Brahmin, and most Brahmins are fairer skinned, they have a higher social hierarchy, and I can see how that can play into it as well.
Yeah. And you've kind of spoke about your personal experiences, but is that what prompted you to make this film?
Definitely. I mean, I was raised by my mum, you know, I feel Indian.
Yeah.
And as an Indian, you know, you'd see what happens within our community, and I can't see how anyone can't be enraged by it. You know, if you understand the history. I mean, the reality is, though, is that I didn't really know much about my history. I just would ignore it and call myself Italian and ignore that side of it.
So you've kind of felt that shame as well that you talked about?
Definitely. Like, it hit me one day. I said, why am I proud to say I'm Italian but not Indian? It's ridiculous, you know. I can't help how I'm born. My mum's an amazing person, and my Indian family. So why am I proud to say? And it's because there is a shame put on you by people in this country, and not just here, but even in India itself. And it's I felt very like when I started to realise why. When I asked that question, and I then challenged myself to find out why. When you learn the reality, anyone would become indignant, and then that made me feel like I had to do something. And obviously, I'm a filmmaker, and I think that film is a great medium to try and talk about certain certain issues, and it just seemed like a natural choice to make a film about it.
So you kind of delved into your ancestry, your kind of origins, but people who do maybe feel shame, if that's what it stems from, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say that you've got to Malcolm X, who's a very important figure for any person of colour, not just he's a black civil rights leader, but for anyone. Is the 50th anniversary or 50th anniversary of his death was marked last week. He's an important person for anyone of colour, especially Indians. In fact, he came to England because Asians asked him to come, and he came here to represent Indians who were subjected to racism in Smethwick.
Oh, right.
He always asked, who taught you to hate yourself? Who taught you to hate the colour of your skin? And if you ask that question and you look into it, then it becomes a lot easier to put down the skin lightening products and gain some race pride. Because the fact that Indians have this inferiority complex, coupled with every other person that's been a victim of European colonialism, you realise it's not actually a mistake. It was a very conscious effort on behalf of imperialists who were within India to make us inferior, which makes us easier to subjugate to their rule. So it's not an accident. This is very conscious, and once we understand that, acknowledge it, you realise that we're not born uncivilized, as they try to say. So understand your history, and don't understand the British version of history, and you'll gain more race pride. And there are people like Malcolm. Unfortunately, India doesn't have a Malcolm X. If we did, it'd be a lot easier to get away from these kind of products. But for Indians, you listen to Malcolm X, who represented us when he came to England. And listen to the teachings. The black community have been through this, and we're behind them in that sense. We don't like to associate ourselves with the black community. We try and get away from it to be more like white people, but we are black. If we're Indian in this country, we're black, and we're not white. And if you look at what they've done, how they've empowered themselves and still trying to do, it will give you good clues about what we've been through.
Okay, and talking about the social aspect, we do actually have another short clip to show our viewers. It's a kind of dance scene, so do you want to explain that?
So this is Parita, who's preparing her dance routine, or practicing her dance routine with her best friend Saida, who's very fair-skinned. They're both going to go to the audition together, and this is her practicing her routine.
Okay, so here is a short clip of My Beautiful White Skin, another short clip for you to see, where they're kind of doing a dance, and you'll see the contrast between Parita and Saida.
Can't believe you're still not getting those transitions down. Tried a new cream. I'm not letting letting this opportunity slip by. You have to make an effort. Otherwise you're just another Paki.
Okay, so that was a short clip from My Beautiful White Skin, and quite clearly there you can see that she's very self-conscious, and you've got that kind of racism element where they say the word Paki, so you kind of brought all of those elements into that, and that scene shows it really clearly. And the whole self-conscious thing and about confidence, kind of, you know, it reminds me of like The Voice, where you should kind of have your eyes closed and see somebody based on their talent. But how far away are we from this?
I mean, before I answer that, I just want to say thank you to Absolute Bollywood, who've done all the choreography for us, and Jenny Jethwani, who runs Absolute Bollywood. They were with us from the beginning, and they've done it for free, so a big thank you to them. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, that's the thing, is that part of what I try to do with that is Saida, who she looks like the perfect, and the actress actually is full Indian as well, Natasha Atherton, very fair skin, perfect for Bollywood, not as good as Parita as a dancer, but because of the way she looks, she's perfect, and I wanted to create that other element there where Parita is constantly surrounded by these pressures that she's not good enough. In terms of the how far away we are from judging people without their skin colour is going to take some time, but we've got to know how to do it, and we have to educate ourselves on where it came from, and not just assume. A lot of Indians do just accept, I think this is just part of our culture, when it's actually not. It's not, you know.
Although it seems like it is, because it's so ingrained, isn't it? So it's kind of like, it's such a norm. I mean, I was on Twitter kind of when I was researching, and I was looking at if anybody had said, oh, you know, just put a bit of bleach on my face or a skin whitening product. Nobody talks about it. Nobody says, oh, you know, I'm just lightening my skin today, because it's a very much hidden thing, even though it's so normal.
You're right, it's so entrenched. It's so entrenched, but if you look around at other ethnic groups as well, I mean, it's like a standard to see a black girl with weave, which isn't, you know, slavery only happened 400 years ago. Before that, Africans for 10,000 years controlled civilization. They didn't wear their hair like that. I mean, we're just so used to seeing a black woman weave. We're so used to seeing an Indian lightening their skin. It is entrenched, but it didn't arrive. It hasn't been there forever. And in the same way it arrived, by gathering this confidence in ourselves, we can remove it and put pressure on people who are, like Kavita Emanuel from who runs Dark is Beautiful, the campaign, who I'm in contact with. She runs this campaign very successfully in India, and she, through petitions, has put pressure on Indian advertising standards, and they now are going to start enforcing rules where you can't show adverts that show discriminatory views on skin lightening, or fairer skin or darker skin. So she knows how to do it. You know, you get people together, you sign petitions, you get enough people behind it, and you put pressure on the people that have some control of, you know, these adverts.
And you kind of, these adverts in India, they're very predominant, and they're very like, I've seen some adverts, and some of them are quite controversial as well in what they're saying, that you should whiten as various parts that are hidden as well. And it's kind of like, okay, so it's not really just about what people see, but it is about the relationships and how it seeps into relationships. Because they're kind of whitening areas that only
intimate
a partner
areas.
would see. And so with those kind of adverts, and you know, totally.
The adverts do provide effectively social commentary. And they're telling people, if you're dark, you're not good enough. I mean, it's funny, we said earlier, you couldn't get away with showing those adverts in the UK.
But also, those adverts are showing, the ones that I'm kind of thinking about and talking about in my head, they show women doing this. So is it a very much, and even in the film clip that we just saw, it's two women as well, and they're competing with each other, and so is it a very much female thing? Is it just something women experience? Because as a man, you're talking about it as well, so...
I mean, obviously in the world we live in, women are, you know, repressed, and the pressure's on them, and men kind of, you know, do whatever they want, and women have to fall in line, as it were. The first skin lightening products in India were aimed at just women.
Right, okay.
And that was in '74, I believe.
Right.
And recently, the last few years, they've been aimed at men as well.
Okay.
So it was something that was put on women. It was.
Okay, and how it filters into relationships, and then the kind of kids as well, and the fact of how it affects children. But kind of coming from a male perspective, have you ever had anybody say, if it affects women more, you're kind of coming from it from a neutral or a kind of outside perspective? So how did you get into that mind frame when you were creating this film?
Yeah, you know what, I don't know that it is just a female thing. Of course, I know that women will suffer from it more because there's more pressures on women in general.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, obviously unfairly, and men have subjugate women to a lot of repression, so it's added pressures for women. I wouldn't say that it's just a female thing, though. But the reason why I thought it was important to do it from a female perspective is because, again, she has more pressures on her than just a man.
Yeah.
You know, she does. As a man, obviously in India and in the UK and anywhere else in the world, you've got more earning power. So you can be dark-skinned, earn some good money, and you kind of, you know, supersede a lot of the social hierarchy. But as a woman, you know, there's more and more pressure on you. Okay,
and so you clearly are coming with the message of kind of eradicating the whole skin whitening thing, but with it being such a thriving industry, it obviously makes the economy in India so much money as well, because people are buying these products. But what are the kind of health effects of them? Because you know, in the film, I don't want to give too much away, I don't know how much I can give away, but she you know, she kind of comes up with this rash at the end. She can't
she ends up burning her skin off through an illegal cream, at the end.
So what are the kind of health effects of it?
So there's, like, hydroquinone is an ingredient that's been banned, but you still get a lot of products that use it. That's a carcinogenic, so it can cause cancer. And it's part of the tips, I believe, sort of touched on that. That's one thing. Most of the products, what they really do is just hit you with a really high strength SPF factor, you know, sunblock. And for Indians living in India, that's dangerous because we're in a tropical climate.
Yes, yeah.
And you can expose yourself then to getting skin cancer. There is a reason why Indians have dark skin.
Yeah,
you know, we've evolved to be protected against the sun in India. So when you start trying to turn yourself into European, like when British went to Australia, they were dropping dead of skin cancer. They're not built for that environment. And if we start lightening our skin, you're opening yourself up to those risks as well. So skin cancers, the carcinogens within the skin lightening products themselves. And there is illegal ones, like our character Parita. She can't get one that works off the counter. So she buys an illegal one and ends up burning all her skin off.
What would you say to people who would just say, do you know what, we're trying to get lighter skin because it's kind of like makeup, you know, or it's like somebody getting a fake tan. So what if somebody says, you know, it's just the equivalent of that?
Well, someone getting a tan, let's say for instance a European person getting a tan, that's a superficial change they want to make, right? They're not going to be judged because of their race. So if a fair-skinned white girl goes for a job, or white guy, or a slightly more tanned one, they're still white and they benefit from being a European. They haven't been subjugated to any kind of hatred because of their race for hundreds of years. But an Indian is lightening their skin because they've been taught that being Indian and dark skin is a bad thing, and hundreds of years of colonial doctrine has reinforced that.
So would you say that colonialism is still rife within the cultures or communities that were affected by it, but not by the colonizers?
Yeah, I mean,
clearly they don't mind getting darker skin.
Yeah, they don't mind, and obviously the new you know, these new generations of Europeans are not to blame for their ancestors' crimes. But absolutely, the mental colonialism, the indoctrination is still very much rife. It takes a long time to change cultural ideas.
Yeah.
It takes a very long time. So Indians even born now, I mean, you know, we're part of the younger generation of Indians, but there's probably been times where, I mean, I can't speak for you, but me certainly have been subjugated to racism, not obviously, because most people don't know I'm Indian, you know.
Yeah.
But the self-hatred, not wanting to identify with it, that's still very much alive. And you meet Indians that come over here, and so my Indian friends, they go out and they say they're Spanish, or a lot of people think I'm Spanish. Yeah, so many, I mean, so many Indians do that. I'm like, why are you saying that? You know, but I know why, because they don't want, like, that line where she says, "You've got to make an effort, otherwise you're just another Paki," that came from my brother, who's much darker than me, much more obviously Indian. And when he was growing up, he didn't used to tell his friends he was Indian. And I said to him, "Why aren't you telling your friends that?" And he said, "It's okay for you," because I tell my friends, he says, "It's okay for you to say that."
Yeah.
Because with you it's like an interesting fact. But he said, "But if I say it," he said, "I turn into a Paki in front of their eyes." And I thought that was a very powerful comment, that your whole race and identity as an Indian can be completely interpreted as this negative word, which is Paki, which is a racist term obviously leveled against us. It became this horrible negative almost alter ego that you can have because of your race. And I thought that was so fascinating and very powerful. That as Indians we always have this thing hanging over our head where people think that we, you know, are uncivilized or that kind of thing, which has sort of been fed to people through colonialism. So in that sense, it's very much alive. And the other thing to remember, as I say, is that Macaulay in the 1800s changed the Indian education system, and it was a British idea of Indian history. So we need to start looking at our real history if we want to start changing.
Stuart, it has been so interesting speaking to you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you have enjoyed the show as much as I have. Tomorrow we are talking about immigration, so do call in if you have any questions or that you would like answered by our expert. Keep watching The Companion tomorrow, 6 till 7 o'clock. Good evening.